Okay, Julia, I'm extremely happy that we have the opportunity to speak today here at one of your galleries, Manusur DM, at Place des Vosges in the center of Paris. And I was also thinking, because about 2 weeks ago I saw one of your works, one of your sculptures at HKW, Haus der Kulturen der Welt in Berlin. Back in 2023, you organized a show at the Magasin CNC in Grenoble as a prelude to your presentation at the Biennale in Venice. And, you know, for a lot of us diasporic bodies, people that have diasporic identities, we somehow have to deal with sort of like being in many places at the same time, be it through family members or identities. And right now, your work, and it's been for a while too, is showing in many different places on this planet, actually. How do you feel about this, basically? How do you feel about the fact that also different iterations of your work, be it sculptures or performances, but also video, are currently playing in various parts of the world? Is that in a way characterizing your practice? Is it representing it? How do you feel about this?
Thank you, Madness, for your question and your invitation to discuss.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
I'm not asking question about how the work travel or was exhibiting the different place, and sometimes I'm reverse the process and I say I make my job, or because the work gives me this possibility to do it, and I think the work choose first, and after I follow the work everywhere, and that it's really different, because when you produce artwork, of course you can think about a certain context to understand where the geography, when, the moment, how, why. It is important to question this type of aspect of this particularity of the context. I'm received some invitation, but I can do that like a projection or like a dream or like a phantasm inside the studio, and I can mentalize or make some mental projection of a space and start to dream with some tools and materials with my team, for example. And when the work decide to move and I'm follow the work, I'm just follow. I'm just accept. But I'm try also like a human to understand who I am for every context, because this perspective change every second, I don't know, I'm not the same person when I'm discuss with you, when I'm discuss with friends, or with, I don't know, parents, or people I know since 20 years, I don't know. And I'm the same person if I'm in the central Paris, close to Place des Vosges, or if I'm in Montreuil, I'm not the same.
Right.
And many subtle things change.
Yeah.
And I think for the work, for my position like an artist, it's also the same, to understand what is my voice, how I can create a dialogue or a discussion, how I can interesting to position it, the work, and myself also.
I like very much this notion of you are following the work, or the work is kind of telling you where to go. I think there's oftentimes this idea or concept around, like you said, you have a commission for a project in a certain space, museum, in a certain geographical location, and then you know, as a creator, as an artist, you know, think heavily about the location and the context. But with your perspective, your work, like you said, is teaching you something, or you're following it. Maybe you can talk a bit about what you've learned through that kind of process, or are you learning something through it when you really follow the work and you are guided by it? What does that mean to you?
It's a life process because you need to learn about different situations, how to show and share an artwork, for example, to do the next one or the next exhibition. It's an accumulation of experience. You can produce inside your home or inside your studio, like intimately, but you need to have this accumulation of experience, what's mean to how to show a sculpture, how to negotiate with an architecture, how to negotiate with a context, and that it's really precious because it's memories of experience, and for that I need to the life need to give me this possibility to have this type of experience also. I don't know if you understand.
Yes, yeah. And you're saying, and I think that's extremely beautiful, you know, it's a life process, right? That you, of course, don't necessarily differentiate between art and life because they interweave or they are influencing each other. And I know that you come from an artist family or artist lineage from Martinique. So I would assume, in a way, you were absorbing it also from a very early age on. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how art was probably also already influencing you as a child, or in how far it played this role in your family, and how you recall this now as an adult.
Now my family can be more bigger or more extend on the planet. I can have some family artists, and I can feel close. And this person can be in Yogyakarta, or this person can be in Senegal, etc. And I told you that because I think the experience also to visit exhibition, to look at your generation or look the generation of art you have, it's possible to see. I don't know, in Paris, in Martinique, are really important also for the memories and for the position like an artist. For example, I'm learn when I'm about what's mean to make a sculpture today. If I'm visit artists make a sculpture and I'm visit exhibition with sculpture or installation. If I'm this week I have this possibility to go to the cinema, it's really important also to have this type of possibility and learn with not about my work, but learn also with the compatriots, with the communities, with the family. Now, if we precise about where from my imaginary or a certain particle of my imaginary, of course, is from Caribbean. In general, I know more Martinique, but I feel myself like a Caribbean because in Martinique, and I give this example very often, if you are in the city called Le Prêcheur, you can see in front of the ocean the shape of the island of Dominique. If I go to the south and I go to Sainte Anne, I can see close to the ocean the shape of Saint Lucia. And I feel myself all the time in a connection. If I go to Diamant, where is the house of Edouard Glissant, I can see, for example, the Rocher du Diamant, this particular stone or particular little island just floating like a strange rock in the middle of the ocean. And yes, my imaginary from that. With this example of what's mean to live in an archipelago organization, I understand the shape on the south, I understand the shape on the north, and I can understand the size of my bodies and my presence on the landscape. And I know in like 2-hour boat, the island I have like another language, some particularity of culture, and all the time you can just feel the interconnection all the time.
And the exchange.
Because everything is very close.
Yeah.
This English island or this Spanish island is very close. And if you go in the center of Fort-de-France, you can meet Haitian population, Republic Dominicana population, Venezuelan population also, and Dominican population, etc., etc. And you can feel this rich context mixed with what is like the caricature of the paradise. Also, what mean like a warm climate, very sweet. What mean exuberance, plantation, exuberance, vegetation, not plantation, vegetation. And in the same time, you feel this social context very, very strongly with some paradox, difficulty, fighting,
violence.
But you feel one thing is more important is how people find some joyful technique to survive. For example, the musicality can be like a resistant part. The dance can be a resistant part to survive in the very precarity context, etc. I have like some indication of the urbanization and the relation between people. Also, guide me a lot in my life every day.
And how these microcosms you were just describing and how they've probably also shaped you as a child and still do until today, how does this influence your relationship to the rest of the world, or does it influence it at all?
You can, when I'm say Caribbean, I think you can imagine Caribbean like a carrefour, like a crossroad, like a hub, or like an international airport. But the word of carrefour or crossroad is interesting because you can imagine the presence of many languages in the same moment. African, Tainos, European, in the same time, Asiatic, also. And this context is give many possibility to understand the connection with different parts of the planet or different continents. And sometimes it's very simple. If we make a ballad and we show, for example, a bread trees, breadfruit, arbre à pain, I can have connection with people from Tahiti. Because this plant, I always know this plant, close to my grandmother's house. And in the same time, I can discuss with people from Tahiti and with people from the Pacific. And that is beautiful because these trees make a movement. If we start to talk about plantation of sugarcane, and we start to talk about the colonial system, the slave trade, the inside the plantation. We can start to talk with people from India, because we talk about this bad grass called sugarcane. And all the time it was like that. Many things in the Caribbean make a movement. If I start to talk about this type of motif, I can think about this typical motif called madras. And that it's a motif from the some important figure or important dress, specifically in Martinique. But I can have like a connection with India, of course. I can have a connection with Scottish. I can have a connection with the Filipino people. And that it's beautiful. And all the time, where you from the Caribbean part, you have this type of connection everywhere. And if you decide to move every skin, every petal, and to understand what happened with this object, with this plant, with this word we use in the language, etc.
You were earlier saying or talking about the archipelago system, and you were talking about your body. You can place yourself, at the beach and look into another island, but still be aware and feel your body, sense your body. I know that generally the body plays an important role in your practice, and I read your practice also as an invitation for the audience and viewers to feel their own bodies, to feel their own physicality when being confronted with your work, for example. Can you describe more how when you were just giving this beach scene, like how do you feel your body? What is it like? What do you mean by that?
When I'm contextualize myself in the place.
Yeah. And when you sense yourself, that's really interesting to me,
The society gives you the reflection of the mirror. Population, people in the street give you reflection of the mirror and give you indication for yourself about who you are and what you represent for the other. And that thing change everywhere. It change if you are downtown, if you are in the suburb, if you are more far and more far. You change country, you change continent, etc., etc. And everybody have like understand what it means to move, what it means to be like a stranger, to be a foreigner, what's mean to to have some human particularity, human historical particularity, and this particularity can be about your education, about where you're from, about inside your blood, inside your DNA. And I like this question, and I'm also like not answer, and I don't want to speak about my representation, and sometimes I just would like to decide and understand the context, and specifically in the interviews context, I can decide sometime, yes, I don't want to use this word, and today I decide not to use it.
Okay. I like that too. But
it's how you can contextualize. It depends, because we have like the question about identity. It's about how we decide, like a person, to identify and that can change every moment. During the day, you're not the same person during the night. You're not the same person in this desk of the gallery, or if we go take a drink at 10 p.m., for example, and everything change. The identity can change, the sexuality can change, the emotion can change, the personality can change, or I don't know.
And it's true and it's very important, but you were, of course, also mentioning earlier the maybe more violent side also, this paradise image, for example, of the Caribbean, a vacation destination, a very destructive and also dangerous colonial force that is still at play, that's still influencing the way we see, the way we feel, or at least trying to. And I know from experiencing your work that it at least in me triggered something viscerally where I felt an invitation to move, and I know that this is probably also some of your intentions, just to move differently, because we are, as we know, particularly European museum institutions and structures, they want us to move in a very specific way in museums, to look at specific paintings, to uphold something you also talk about. I've heard you talk about a certain aura, around specific artists and individuals. And I like and experience the power of your work as something that is just inviting to move, because I don't think that we really feel free to move, in many ways. And maybe you can talk about this, the importance of movement, physical movement, in your practice.
I don't know. This question is difficult because he asks first, try to find the way how to open the door about emancipation. And I think the first thing is how you can feel free when you decide to emancipate yourself and emancipate your bodies. And sometimes we learn too much conventional, concept or conventional reaction or conventional movement about every situation. For example, normally it's not good if I decide to stand up and move, because I have some cameras and I need to sit. That it is how the context gives me some obligation. And I think for the life, for the position of the bodies, it's like that. It's I'm free to emancipate myself and use my hand and my finger for talk, because it can give me some possibility to explain, because I can give some affirmation about the world, about my conviction, for example, but I can also don't move because I'm afraid about this type of situation and maybe it's not comfortable and I prefer not move. And I think the position to be a person, to be a human, to be an artist, it's like that all the time. You decide one moment if you would like to emancipate, if you would like to move the line, to open the door, to change something, if you feel comfortable in this type of context and maybe you don't like the pencil and you would like just use your finger, or I don't know.
And are all these, you are an interdisciplinary artist and you work in various media, and would you read sort of like working as, in sculpture, but also in video with sound, sonic is of course a very important medium you work with. Are these all like supporters in that, in an invitation just to move, to feel, at least for these moments, if I come see your artwork, to have this momentary experience of like, actually I can maybe sense differently, feel differently?
Sometimes I just feel some frustration. For example, if I make a sculpture and I can have some frustration with sculpture in some equilibre aspect or equilibre construction, it is interesting, but this sculpture exist in a silence, and this silence make me feel some frustration. And I just would like say, okay, if I'm not there and people see the sculpture, how I can share the title. And I think I can have like some frustration with the concept of the cartel and go there, read the materials, the title, and go there, come back to see the sculpture.
You mean this like conventional choreography we within museums or exhibition spaces?
And this type of conventional or academic, what means a sculpture, sometimes I can, like, for me, for example, like a sculpture can be very archaic. I like to do it in the studio. And I can just ask myself one moment, okay, it's so archaic. When I say that, you can make a new sculpture, a new object in 2025 and work with bronze, with stone, with, I don't know. And in the same time, you use like a combination of gesture for produce a sculpture. And in the same time, you can just imagine some people 1,000 years ago make this same type of gesture and what it's mean in 2025. And you can like it deeply. And you can like it and would like to share with the people. But sometimes I'm
and you're speaking about the very like manual movements or the within producing it or making the sculpture. That experience is something that's joyful.
Yes, but it is an experience of joy, but I can receive some frustration, and this frustration gives me some indication to maybe write a poetry. To extend what I feel, what I would like to do, what is hors champ. And this poetry can give some indication to make a song and produce a music and produce maybe a video and produce maybe an installation, etc., etc. And it work like that. And if I'm feel some frustration about sculpture, I'm start to write. If I'm feel some frustration about writing, I'm start to sing, etc., etc. And I'm trying to understand how the different thing I'm like can connect. And if I'm do it by myself, I have like connection and then start to give more and more with the experience, like the particularity of what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to share. The possibility to not yes, I like all these different disciplines, and I would like to make all these different disciplines in the same time. And sometimes it's the social context give you some obligation, I don't know, for very pragmatic reality.
But would you also say that you are in a way called by each discipline or medium, or is it really this very like emotional ride in a way? You were just saying, you start with the sculpture and then you sense this frustration and you would switch into poetry. And if this is something that sets limits for you, you can express it vocally through singing. And is it something, it's an intuitive thread you follow, you feel in the moment, and you just let go. Is this how it works for you?
I don't know how it's working, but I feel the necessity to use this different medium and connect these different medium because I have the idea. The question of the artwork is less important. The question is how the exhibition take more place in my head. How I can share a dialogue between object, between form, between sound, between world, etc. And how this dialogue can create something for the public. And in the same time, I can, in this idea of frustration, I can try to push some possibilities, and I can find help with new technology or with the activation, with the question of the performance, and have the possibility, have the idea. Sometimes the new technology can give a new formulation what's mean beauty or what's mean a new regeneration of exotism. Because you, for example, what I can do with a camera, we have like years and years of experience of camera, and have many other friends participate in this knowledge of experience. And sometimes you can, with the new possibility and the new technique, you can maybe extend a certain type of beauty. And yes, I like the idea, this type of relation with a new type of beauty can be like very like exotism. And it can give like more positive aspect about this world, because it's not like a cliche anymore. It's like a new regeneration of representation or what's mean beauty or what's mean art or etc.
Aesthetics.
Aesthetics. Thank you.
When we talk about these systems, whether it is sort of like the very set choreographies of entering a museum, a European museum, of which you did last year, representing a whole country that has an extremely problematic history, a very violent history towards certain bodies also in particular. How do you deal with that? I mean, you were the youngest artist that represented France last year at the Biennale in Venice. Is this something that is occupying at all, or is it really also for you to claim that agency and that freedom, that artistic freedom? And then you do it earlier when we were preparing for the shoot. You were also talking about how joyful it was, and it was very beautiful to hear this experience of representing France and of filling the pavilion with your work. Maybe you talk a little bit about this process. How did you experience this whole period, and how did you not feel so constrained by this? I mean, we all know that this whole setup of Venice and the Biennale is extremely colonial, of course, nation states and this whole competitive atmosphere and everything. But with you, and particularly also with your work and inviting bodies to move freely, I think you found ways to really have a beautiful physical experience too in these spaces.
For introduce your question, you start to speak about a word, and this word is museum. And I think this word, for example, need to be questioned.
Questioned. Yes.
Yes.
It's being questioned. You mean in this moment now? It's that we're living in a moment in which it is more and more questioned. Or?
Yes, because if you speak about how the bodies navigate in this type of space or this typology of space, so what's mean a museum, we need to question the origin of the word, and we need to question if we need this word of museum anymore. For example, but one word I think it's have more connection and move more. It's the world of art. I think have the sensation the world of art can circulate more, like the question of the museum. The question of the beauty can circulate more, like the question of the museum. And yes, I think this word need to be questioned if we would like to think and maybe imagine or create a new type of space for beauty or for art. And that is very difficult, and I think we can discuss very long time.
Why is it difficult?
Because it's the same thing if we we think about the colonial system was like the prefiguration of the capitalism, and if today in 2025 in March we find some limits of this type of system and we would like to move everything, we need to think about the ancestrality of the world of capitalism, the ancestrality of the word liberalism, for example, and we need to wake up very early for change and decide, okay, today we turn the pages and we open a new chapter, etc. That it's really difficult. It's look like utopia, and sometimes we need have like years or maybe century to realize like what's today is an utopia and transform, and maybe we not have chance together to find a new type of human relation without this type of transaction or domination. And I think it's the same thing for if we need to think about art, not about art, about what's mean a museum, what's mean collection, what's mean speculation, what's mean art world and art world system in the market. If we change the system, all the system change inside, and all the particularity or the category inside the system need to change. And also for what's mean produce art today in 2025.
Yes, what does that mean? And also another question that's provoking this one is what is the role of the artist in 2025, for example? What could be, it's not an easy or simple answer, but what could be the role of the artist?
I think I've different type of art and different type of artists, and I have different type of artists like a different type of human, and we are not autodidact. We go to school, to university, we learn, we work in the certain sector, and we visit exhibition in different city, maybe different country, and we have this possibility to read books. I don't know, we are not autodidact, and that changed many things. And we are inside a certain type of art world, and we can say I have many different type of art world, and different reason to make art, and different reason make beauty, and it depends which case you decide to be, and where is your where you would like to share, where you would like to be, who you would like to be. I don't know what is your life perspective and your life challenge.
But what do we do? I think it was during a conversation at Art Basel here in Paris a couple of years ago, where you very beautifully also in a way debunked or demystified this whole aura around certain artists of the past, who are like in the art canon and who are being kept almost as these deities, up there in order to in the end also maintain certain power structures and colonial systems. And what do we do with these kinds of histories, that are very strong and that are being reproduced, as we know, over and over again? We are in France, we are in Paris. I mean, there's plenty of names we could call out that seem to be so set in stone and can't be overcome, or whose genius seems to be not surpassable or something like that.
Yes, it is really interesting. For example, for explain that, it's simple. Do you have a job?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, several.
And what is your job?
I'm a curator and I'm a writer. To make money, you mean? I was just thinking, I was just spending time with my mother, and I'm a son too, and that felt like a job. But to make money, I work in a specific context, yeah.
And, okay.
I'm an interviewer too.
And thank you for this moment. Yes. Also, I need to have like a job. Also, I need to win money.
Yeah.
And it's not mean I don't. I'm prefer to be inside a place where what passionate myself is more important, and I have this sensation I would like do something by myself, and have this possibility, and I'm decide make art, and I'm decide make a job with art. And we need to be to speak like that. Sometimes we are very we don't need to mystify an artist in 2025. Yes. Inside your question, we need to talk to really and say, okay, it is a job, a beautiful job, and with this job has the possibility dream and share my dream, share my emotion, share my research, share some social experience, and share a certain perception of beauty. And that is my job. And maybe I can extend and have the possibility to share transmission of what I'm like and what give me energy to wake up every morning.
And to share it to really with a communal.
Yes, make this type of transmission. And it's what, for me, I find this place of, in this context of liberalism, in the capitalism, etc. And I'm decided to do it close to Paris.
To navigate through it.
Yes. And I'm participate with my particularity, with the particularity are all the time with me, about my representation, about my identity, about my social position, and I'm decided to negotiate with that. And with this particularity, I make, the French Pavilion in this context of Venice Biennale, and I'm accept to work with my particularity and try to understand what kind position I can have in this context, understand the what's mean a biennale, understand what's mean Giardini, what's mean Italia, what's mean national pavilion, and what's mean make like art in this type of context.
How did you experience this entire process of participating as the artist representing France in 2024?
It's simple. I'm just was myself. It's not a joke. It's really important why I need to change. Why I need to, why I need to do what I don't know how to do. For the pavilion, I do what I like to do, and what I would like to share, with the possibility to do it in the best way.
I like a lot the way that you mentioned beauty a lot, because I feel many people are afraid for some reason, I don't know why, to explicitly talk about it. I think art has a lot to do with beauty. We maybe have a lot of preconceptions around it, but I think essentially also the role of the artist is to present their versions of beauty. Maybe you talk about beauty.
Beauty is interesting because beauty has some subjectivity inside, and beauty is also what you're afraid. It's also a rejection. It's also a repulsion. It's also an attirance. It's also a fascination. And you have...
It's a whole emotional landscape.
Yes, beauty have color...
Palette. No?
Palette, exactly.
Yeah.
When you can transform the red with more yellow, orange, and you can make the chromatic circle. I think beauty have some chromatic possibility also, and that it is really important. And if I have the possibility to create a repulsion.
Repression or?
Repulsion. Repulsion.
Yes.
I make beauty. If I have the possibility make rejection, it's beauty. If I have possibility make fascination, it is beauty, etc., etc.
It's the human condition.
Yes.
It's part of the human condition. Yeah.
Yes.
And I also want to talk about your experience in Dakar, because you brought your performance together with Anna Pino, who was the choreographer. Your piece, Algorithm Ocean, True Blood Moves, to the Biennale of Dakar in front of the Justice Ministry or Department or Palace, in Dakar. And if I remember correctly, was it the first time that you really presented also a performance piece on the continent itself? Or have you done it before?
No.
It was the first time, no? Anyway.
If we talk about a group, a group piece with this type of condition, yes, it was the first time.
How did you experience
But the question of the performance is more subtle, because you can perform like an artist every discussion, and have a souvenir about discussion in raw material in 2016, and it was share poetry, share still movement, and you can call that also a performance.
For sure.
But it was, the first time for the conclusion of the Dakar Biennale.
Yes.
To have this sharing with these young people, travel from New York with Anapi, with Malou Beauvoir, with Boris Percu, and to share a particular.
And how was this this live experience of being sort of on that soil and sharing it with the audience, with the people that were coming from various places? And maybe also, did you rehearsed also in Dakar for a while? Yeah.
Yes.
How was this process?
It was, inside your question, it's difficult because we can use the part of the affect, how a place, a country can affect you.
Or how you also, in terms of the very beginning of our conversation, just really more the relationship, the exchange, that's where the interesting stuff.
But we not talk about affect.
Yeah, no.
And that also is the important part.
Yes.
And sometimes it's difficult to talk about affect because affect touch the intimity. One thing we do with the group of the dancer and with the group of the performance, because we are like 20 people, with the team of performers, the team of Art Week,
Art Week Foundation. Yeah.
Exactly. We go to Gorée Island and we visit first the door of non-return, like a symbol. The dancer arrived direct from the airport, just puts the suitcase in the hotel and we take a bus and we go immediately to Gorée Island before to rehearsal, make a rehearsal. And that was like to understand or make like a, for many reasons, like a reverse travel. And
to return in a way, right? To the door.
I don't know it. Yes, go start to United States in New York, take a plane, arrive to Dakar, go to the door, return, start your rehearsal, make a rehearsal, and finish to do it for real in front the old Palace of Justice. It was how we can think about this type of movement, like Afro-diasporic person. And we arrived with this typical drum from Martinique called le tambour belay, and start to play this drum for open the possibility to make movement. We share this video called Zombie Eterno. You have a chance to see in Grenoble. And play with these memories of gesture the bodies accumulate and refine with the social media, and how the social media can be like a place where some human gesture can reappear in a strange context, with a challenge context of TikTok. Old ancestral human gesture can reappear, and you can see how a gesture can travel and change sexuality, change religion, change, but it was the same for different reasons, and that it is fantastic. Yes, it was a beautiful and memorable moment to have this chance to do that in Dakar.
And a very collective moment
with
this group. So what is coming now for you in the next weeks and months? What are you planning to do? How is also, like you were earlier saying, the pavilion the period is over in Venice, but of course it's continuing, the projects are continuing, maybe morphing into different forms or other forms. But what are the next?
In French we say futur proche. It's like it's a close future.
It's from French class, I remember.
Close past. I like to use this idea. And in the close past, we opened like a first venue of the French Pavilion in Brown University in United States. It was important how this work or this group of work can travel and change of context, and how the context can modify the relations, the signification, the interpretation of the content, and that it really surprising. We opened and participate about this group show in HKW in Berlin about what's mean a traveler, what's mean a guest, what's mean to move with your identity in this planet. And I'm share this particular door. And I'm opened a second venue last week of the French Pavilion in the Normandy, in the art school where I make my studies. It was like a comeback after 15 years when I'm finished my studies and 20 years when I'm start my studies.
It's a return also in a way. No?
Yes,
There's a couple of returns.
Reconnect with a community of people, reconnect with old friends, with people who was in charge of the student 20 years ago. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
And tomorrow I go to Caen, make a studio visit with the young artist and make a conference. And next week we make a symposium in Brown University to extend some content about the pavilion, about music, about poetry and literature, about resistance and how the work can take in charge. Maybe this type of knowledge and how this knowledge can share and give like a discussion with in the university context.
Wow. Thank you.
Futur proche et passé proche.
Passé proche. Passé proche. Futur, I will remember this. Futur proche, passé proche. Thank you, Julien.
Merci
so
à toi,
much.
Magnus.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Dankeschön.